Hello and welcome to our latest podcast. My name's Chris Chapman and I'm the Head of Technical Support of the Building Safety Group. Today's talk will be on the fire risk assessments required for timber frame sites. A little bit about who we are first. We were established in 1965. We're merged with the Bristol and Wiltshire safety groups and we grew by acquisition, including Devon and Cornwall, Nottingham, Oxford and Staffordshire safety groups. We operate throughout mainland UK. We're a not-for-profit organisation. We're owned by our membership for the benefit of our membership, and we're recognised by the HSE. We're the largest construction safety group within the UK, with over 800 member companies located throughout the UK, and we visit over 18,000 sites per year. We look after 23,000 operatives. We inspect 3,700 workplaces apart from construction sites, and over 10,000 people attend our training courses every year. And we carry the ISO accreditations of 9001 Quality Assurance, 14001 on the environment, and the OSAS 18001 on occupational health and safety. You can see from the map here the spread of our membership from up into Aberdeen down into the foot of Cornwall, and the red dots are our regional training centres. So that's a bit about us, but I thought it worthwhile to start this podcast with the HSE's take on timber frame. There's all sorts of stories around about the HSE frowning on timber frame, but this is an open letter that the HSE published in September of 2014, and it says the purpose of this letter is to explain the HSE's expectations in relation to the management of fire risks prior to and during the construction of timber frame structures. And this letter has been produced in cooperation with the Structural Timber Association, which represents the industry's manufacturers and suppliers. So, as you can see, they've consulted with the STA to come up with this, and basically the summary of their take on it is all those making design and procurement decisions that significantly affect fire risk should consider and reduce the risk and consequences of fire during the construction phase through design. Failure to do so may constitute a material breach for which the HSE will apply its fee for intervention scheme to those duty holders who have contributed to the breach. So they've made it quite clear that there's nothing inherently wrong with the timber frame procedure as long as it is well thought out, well planned, right from the word go. So the regulations and guidance that cover this, well, Health and Safety at Work Act, the Umbrella Act that covers everyone at work. The Management of Health and Safety at Work regulations is a requirement for risk assessment. The CDM 2015 regulations, which spell out quite clearly who has these responsibilities. The Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order and the Joint Code of Practice, the 9th edition now for fire and construction sites. There's the HSG Guidance 168, Fire Safety in Construction, and the STA's Health and Safety Code of Practice, and the STA's 16 steps to fire safety, which is what we'll use as our guide through this podcast. So a timber frame building is one where all structural load-bearing parts comprise of timber elements. For instance, the load-bearing walls, floors and roof are all of timber. And quite often timber frame will be faced with a non-structural outer cladding of brickwork or other material to give the outward appearance of a more traditional structure. And fire in timber frame buildings is more extensive than fires in traditional builds, and fires during the construction phase can be particularly devastating if timber is unprotected and there is little to prevent the involvement of the whole building. A fire starting on a timber frame construction project will rapidly spread to involve the structure itself, leading to inevitable collapse, spread to surrounding structures, properties and a conflagration that the fire service are unable to tackle. And I thought to emphasise this point, mention this test case of a South Wales construction company that was fined £100,000 by the HSE for having inadequate fire precautions on a 54 timber framed house site. There was no one hurt, there wasn't a fire, nothing happened, but the HSE were very unhappy that the company hadn't planned for any contingency or taken any steps to reduce the risk of fire, and it resulted in a heavy fine for the company. J.G. Hale pleaded guilty to breaching the regulations 27 and 29 of the CDM regulations 2015, which stipulate that traffic routes must be organised to ensure pedestrians and vehicles can operate safely in proximity to each other, and that steps must be taken to prevent injury from a fire or explosion, and was fined £40,000 and £60,000 for the offences, and ordered to pay prosecution costs of £4,634 plus a £120 statutory charge. The decision whether to use a timber frame or an alternative form of construction should be subject to a detailed risk assessment early in the concept and initial design stage. Factors that should be considered in this risk assessment include the proximity of existing surrounding buildings, the potential for fire spread to neighbouring structures either via radiated heat or blown embers, and the likelihood of the spread between buildings will be dependent upon many factors including building height, width, types of opposing construction, wind direction, etc. The Structural Timber Association, formerly the UK TFA, represents the majority of timber frame suppliers and have developed a strategy called Site Safe to ensure that manufacturing companies work closely with clients, principal designers and principal contractors to give clear, concise information and assistance to ensure maximum fire safety on all construction sites. Adoption of Site Safe is a mandatory requirement of membership of the STA on large timber frame projects. The site safety strategy is written with a focus on timber frame buildings that are typically above 600 square metres of floor area, or where the development comprises of block of frame buildings where each block is greater than 300 square metres of floor area. The site safe guidance is aimed at the commercial construction market where multiple houses, flats or rooms for residential purposes are built. It is not applicable to the one-off house market or small developments. So Site Safe is a clear staged process which may necessitate actions to prevent site fires as a result of an individual risk assessment. The risk assessment should consider the items contained in a document detailing 16 clear steps to a safe site. The Site Safe is a three-stage process. Stage 1 being the pre-construction planning stage, which is key. Stage 2, the timber frame erection stage on site. And Stage 3, the handover by the STA member to the principal contractor or client. So the risk assessment should consider the items contained in the document detailing the 16 clear steps to a safe site, which is available from the STA website, and the 16 steps for guidance only and not necessarily appropriate for all sites. The decision to adopt some or all of the steps should be taken following the individual risk assessment. So step 1, comply with the CDM 2015 regulations. CDM regulations, whatever one are in force, 2015 at the moment. But as we know, that's the third incarnation of these regulations, and they may change again. So we have our duty holders there, clients, principal designers, principal contractors, and all of these people have duties under CDM in parts 2 and 3. The clients have a duty to ensure that construction work can be carried out so far as is reasonably practicable, without risks to health or safety of any person affected by the project. Principal designers have a duty to plan, manage and monitor the pre-construction phase and coordinate matters relating to health and safety to ensure, so far as reasonably practicable, the project is carried out without risk to health or safety. And designers have a duty to take into account the general principles of prevention to eliminate, so far as is reasonably practicable, foreseeable risks to the health and safety of any person who may be affected. Principal contractors have a duty to plan, manage and monitor the construction phase and coordinate matters relating to health and safety during the construction phase to ensure that, so far as is reasonably practicable, construction work is carried out without risk to health or safety. And contractors have a duty to plan, manage and monitor construction work carried out either by the contractor or by workers under that contractor's control to ensure, so far as is reasonably practicable, it is carried out without risk to health and safety. So in part 4 we get down to the nitty-gritty, the actual regulations on each aspect of a construction site, and the relevant ones to a timber frame site are Regulation 17, safe places of construction work, 18, good order and site security is key. The majority of timber frame fires are started by arson. Regulation 29, prevention of risk from fire, flooding or asphyxiation. Regulation 30, emergency procedures. 31, emergency routes and fire exits. And Regulation 32, fire detection and firefighting. Step 2, appoint a fire safety coordinator. It's best practice for a fire safety coordinator whose role includes liaison with the local emergency service and other duties to be appointed for all construction sites. Larger projects should also have fire marshals and deputy fire marshals. Step 3. Produce a fire safety plan. A written plan must be produced setting out everything to be done to minimise the risk of fire and to protect people on site. It must be updated at regular intervals during the construction process and whenever significant design changes occur. During construction, it is the principal contractor or fire coordinator's duty to ensure that all procedures, precautionary measures and safety standards in the plan are clearly understood and complied with by everyone working on the project. And for details of what's required in the plan, refer to the Joint Code of Practice. Step 4. Check, inspect and test throughout construction. The principal contractor or fire safety coordinator is responsible for checks, inspections and tests throughout the construction of the site. These checks may be weekly, daily or at the end of each shift. Where 24-hour security is provided, fire checks should be done throughout the night, as well as during holiday periods and weekends, the times when sites are most vulnerable to arson. Written records must be maintained on training, fire drills and any other procedures. And for more detailed guidance, refer to the Joint Code of Practice again. Step 5. Communicate and liaise. Effective communication and regular liaison with other parties, such as the emergency services and security personnel, is extremely important in assessing and managing potential risks during construction. The principal contractor or fire safety coordinator on site should liaise with the local fire service at an early stage and invite them to undertake site inspections and familiarisation tours as suggested in the Joint Code of Practice. And for large timber frame projects, there must be specific discussion with the fire service to verify and maintain the source and capacity of water for firefighting. Provision of firefighting water is a fundamental requirement on these sites. Step 6. Promote a fire-safe working environment. The principal contractor, fire safety coordinator, must ensure fire safety processes and precautions for the site are fully maintained throughout the entire period of construction and must promote a fire-safe working environment, working in close partnership with the site management and subcontractors. For example, once the structure has been erected and handed over by the timber frame supplier, the principal contractor must ensure subdivision firewalls are not compromised by subsequent work such as the installation of services, and guidance on managing fire drills and fire alarms, etc. on site is contained within the Joint Code of Practice. Step 7. Fire detection and warning. If a construction site fires, the primary aim is not to save the building, but to make sure everyone on site reaches safety as soon as possible. Therefore, the purpose of the detection and warning system is to allow the safe evacuation of the building and the whole site. An appropriately designed, installed and maintained automatic fire detection and alarm system can reasonably ensure that site operatives will be aware of the fire before it can become large enough to compromise their escape route. As a general rule, handbells, whistles and similar fire alarm devices are probably not going to be loud enough or heard easily by all site operatives on multi-storey construction projects. Electrically operated fire warning devices such as howlers must always be used in timber frame projects unless it can be clearly demonstrated that other systems are effective. And these devices should be linked to detection devices strategically placed around the structure to provide the earliest possible detection of fire. And step 8. Protecting emergency escape routes, the 35-metre rule. The Joint Code of Practice provides excellent advice on emergency procedures that are relevant to all construction sites. In addition, for timber frame buildings, a minimum of 2 emergency escape routes must be maintained at all levels until completion of the internal plasterboard. For example, a fire escape window in each apartment would provide an alternative escape route as long as it was also possible to escape outside the building via scaffolds or stairways nearby. There should be a maximum combined, both horizontal and vertical, travel distance of no more than 35 metres from a place of work to either the outside air at ground level or to a 30-minute fire protected stairwell, either internal or external to the building. For internal stairs, fire protection must be provided on all sides to form a protected stair shaft, but for external stairs the fire protection need only be on the building side of the stair. Step 9. Building in fire protection along the way. Vertical containment measures within timber frames are considered to be one of the most logical and practical solutions for high-risk sites once all the usual site security, fire detection and suppression measures have been adopted. For smaller or low-risk sites, the general good housekeeping and standard approach may be more appropriate and proven in practice. For other sites, the subdivision of the frame by fire-resisting barriers, offering a minimum of 30 minutes fire-resistant insulation, integrity and stability, must be considered as part of the strategy for minimising fire spread risk during construction. There are a wide range of options available to designers and builders, and the choice of barriers will depend entirely upon the specific characters of the development site. Containment measures may be applicable to all types and heights of buildings, and if necessary you may need to start from ground floor level or other areas most at risk from arson attack, depending on the outcome of the fire risk assessment. There may also be alternative means of fire suppression which could influence the degree and nature of compartmentation required in the building. Step 10. Site security against arson. Almost all the major construction fires involving timber frame are known or are suspected to be the result of deliberate and determined malicious damage. Additional guidance should be sought at the earliest stage from local fire service and police, who will know well the risks of any particular site location. Further advice is also available from the Arson Prevention Bureau. As a general rule, timber frame sites must be kept secure at all times, with access ladders or stairs to upper levels made secure at the end of the day to prevent potential arsonists getting further into the building. Other possible access points, such as windows, should also be made secure as early as practical in the construction programme. Early plasterboarding and fireproofing of the ground floor level is also recommended as a further measure to reduce the risk. Step 11. Protecting temporary buildings and accommodation. The Joint Code of Practice provides extensive advice on how to protect temporary buildings and accommodation, such as site huts, offices and material stores, and how to ensure such buildings do not create an additional fire risk on site. See Section 13. Such buildings are usually separated from the building under construction and from other temporary or permanent buildings by a fire break of 10 metres. On timber frame sites this should be increased to 20 metres, or if this isn't possible, they must comply with the additional criteria listed in Section 13 of the Joint Code of Practice. Step 12. Safe storage of materials including flammable liquids and LPG. Highly combustible materials must not be stored in the building under construction. On all timber frame sites, storage areas should be at least 15 metres from any building, not just timber frame building, and containers and drums must not be stored within 6 metres of any building or boundary fence unless the boundary is a wall with at least 30 minutes fire resistance. And if soft landing systems are being used to mitigate falls from heights, such systems must have a fire retardant cover and must be removed from the frame at the point when they are no longer needed. Step 13. Designing out hot works. In many cases, it's possible to design out the need for hot work, such as work using blowtorches, and this should be the aim of all designers and trades. Where this is not possible, all site workers must pay particular heed to the Joint Code of Practice guidance on hot work. In timber frame buildings under construction, any area of hot work must be actively monitored for at least 1 hour after completion and the area revisited 2 hours later. Clearly this will mean that any such work must not be carried out towards the end of the day or within 2 hours at least of the site being vacated. Step 14. Keeping a tidy site. Good housekeeping is essential on all construction projects. Untidy sites are usually unsafe sites. Structural timber does not tend to catch fire easily, but it does become a lot more vulnerable if waste materials such as timber shavings, paper and flammable materials are left lying around a timber frame building under construction. Regular clearance of rubbish from the active areas of construction will help thwart the opportunistic fire setter. On timber frame developments, it is the responsibility of the principal contractor or fire safety coordinator to ensure all areas are cleared of rubbish daily into skips. Open-top skips should not be placed within 10 metres of a timber frame building under construction. Step 15. Dealing with plant and equipment. Most construction sites will have stationary plants such as compressors and generators, as well as petrol or diesel powered vehicles nearby. These create a fire risk, and common sense guidance on how to reduce this risk is contained within the Joint Code of Practice. Petrol or diesel powered plant should not be used at all inside a timber frame building under construction unless absolutely necessary, and if this cannot be avoided, strict controls on fuel storage and refueling must be observed. Any spillages must be cleaned up and removed from the building at once, and in addition, it is recommended that a timber frame building must be protected from any heat generated by working plant. And finally, step 16, a no smoking site. All timber frame developments under construction must be no smoking sites. This is already frequently the case, but a smoking ban must be more vigorously enforced by the principal contractor or fire safety coordinator. On high-risk sites, it may even be appropriate to ban any smoking materials being brought onto site at all, or ensuring that any smoking materials are kept safely away in a locker room and or associated smoking area, which must be well away from the timber frame. They're the 16 steps. Thank you very much for your attention and for listening to it. I hope you found it of particular help. But if you do have any questions, my contact details are on the screen at the moment, and I'd be delighted to hear from you. But for the time being, thank you.